Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more buckshot testing, and today we've definitely got a really interesting combination to try out, and it's one that a couple of you guys have really wanted to see and said that I need to try it to see what it can do, and I'm definitely curious about what it can do as well, because it might really work out, or it could absolutely ruin our pattern at the same time. I know a couple of you guys have said you've seen good results out of a combo like this before, so I guess we'll just have to see what I can get out of it today. But as for the shells I've got out here today, I brought out some more of these. These are some Winchester Super X 12 gauge 3.5 inch 54 pellet load of 4 buck, moving about 1150 feet per second. So definitely a big hefty shell with a lot of pellets flying down range, but it is 4 buck, so they are a little bit smaller than your double-aught buck pellets. So if they follow the same trend as like a turkey shell or something would, the smaller pellet might like a little bit more constriction of a choke. So that's kind of what we have out here today to see what happens with it. And as for that setup, I brought out the Mossberg 835 Ulti-Mag here, but I put in this choke since you guys wanted to see it. This is a Kicks Gobblin Thunder 680 constriction. It's technically a turkey choke, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not too overly tight for a 12 gauge load in general. These 835s are overboard to a 10 gauge barrel size, so it is a quote-unquote turkey choke constriction considering the context of an 835, but in general, this is probably about an extra full choke in a standard 12 gauge as for constriction. So I'm definitely curious to see what this can do with those little bit smaller number 4 buck pellets. Is it going to work out? Is it going to completely ruin the pattern? I don't know. I'm hoping we see some good results, but we're just going to have to test it and see what happens. But as for the test today, everything is set up the same as usual. I've got the big sheet of paper at 40 yards. I've got the chronograph, and I've got some templates that we can lay up over our target for a better reference point as to how it actually patterned. So enough talking, let's get you guys a view of this target and take this shot and just see what kind of results we can get from this 54 pellet Winchester load of 4 buck through this Kicks 680 turkey choke. Is it going to work out? Is it not? Let's go over here and test it and see what happens. Okay, so that shell gave us 1181 through the chrono. The box claim is 1150, so we are just a touch above that, but 1180 is plenty good enough for what these shells should be moving. So I think we're just fine as far as velocity goes up here. But what kind of a pattern was it actually able to give us down there at 40 yards? Let's go check it out and see what we got. Alright, so now we're down here at our 40-yard paper, and this is what we got. We were just a touch low on the paper, but more than likely that was probably just me rather than the combination actually shooting low. And what we see here is a pretty nasty looking pattern. It's definitely way better than what we saw with the stock full choke out of that 835. And for a number 4 buck shell, that's kind of where I want to be at as for a pattern goes. That would absolutely be a nasty hunting pattern. Now I did count as I was going through and circling here, and we had 51 out of the 54 pellets actually hit our paper here, which I believe is actually the same number of pellets that hit the paper out of the stock full choke in that 835 when we tested it. But this is way hotter and way tighter in the core area. And as for that general core area down there, I did measure it, and that swarm of pellets is roughly about 15 inches before we start getting really sporadic. And as you can see, even though we do have a nice tight core, we have some definite flyers around the edges of the pattern, which is no surprise considering this is technically a buckshot shell going through a turkey choke. So that's not entirely surprising, and out of a 54 pellet load, I'll take a handful of flyers around the edges. Now, even though this looks good, I think we might be able to tune this in and make it a little bit more even with a slightly more open constriction choke. If I had something like a 690 or a 695 for that 835, I think that might be the ticket. But I definitely think we should test the 710 turkey full choke and see what that one does as well, because I think that might give us a little bit more of an even pattern than this. But either way, let's throw a couple templates up and see what it looks like. Okay, and here's our 10-inch circle, and if we line it up with the actual core of our pattern, we have about 25 pellets in there. I think I counted 26. So essentially, half the load is within a 10-inch circle. Definitely a very nice and hot core, and pretty much what I'm looking to see out of these particular shells. So we're looking great there. There's no doubt that that would do some damage downrange. But let's throw a couple hunting templates up and see what kind of results it would actually look like if you were to take the shot on a deer or hog or something like that. Okay, and we'll start off here with our deer template. I did move it down just a little bit because I think I probably pulled the shot low. So to give it its fair chance, I did move it down a little bit compared to our point of aim. And clearly that would be absolutely devastating. Now for myself personally, I'm still a double aught kind of guy when it comes to deer hunting with buckshot. But I know there's a lot of guys out there that do use 4-buck, especially in those little bit thicker or closer quarters type of ranges or swamps where they might take a standing still shot, they might take a shot that's on the run, and they need the pellet count to be able to make up for that. And clearly that would absolutely do it. There's no doubt about that. Now you would absolutely have a lot of pellets in the meat, or at least a lot of damage to the front shoulders if you were to use that kind of a pattern on a deer, but that's what some people are looking for, and clearly it would do the job just fine. But let's throw the hog template up here now and see what that looks like, and that'll give us a little bit of a reference as to what it would look like for a predator load as well. Okay, and here's that hog template, and it's pretty much the same story. Absolutely good enough to be a hog hunting shell all day long. And if you were hunting predators like a coyote or fox, they would be a little bit smaller than this hog template, and clearly it would be plenty enough for them as well. Which brings me a little bit to what I kind of mentioned last time. A 4-buck shell is a fantastic predator load that you can use for deer and hogs as well if you wanted, but a 3.5-inch 54 pellet load, is it worth the extra price as well as dealing with the extra recoil over something like a regular 2 3/4 or 3-inch number 4-buck shell? I don't know if it's worth it for me personally, but for some of you guys, that might be exactly what you're looking for. Either way, at the end of the day here, it's plenty good enough, and that is a fantastic pattern, all things considered, through technically what is a turkey choke. So I'm definitely happy with these results here today, but I do think we can still fine tune it a little bit more. So I'm definitely looking forward to testing them with more chokes and seeing what we can get, because that right there ain't bad at all. Alright y'all, well, what did you think about that pattern right there? Definitely a pretty nice looking pattern. I really like how hot that core area is, but it isn't perfectly uniform and even throughout it. We definitely have some flyers and stuff around the edges, which is not surprising considering the load and setup we used today. But this is a huge improvement over what we saw through the regular stock full choke. And now I'm definitely curious to see what happens if we test something in the 690 to 7 range as far as constriction goes. I do have the 710 turkey full choke that we can try. That might give us another really good result. But at the end of the day here, you can't argue too much about that kind of a pattern. But as always, leave your thoughts in the comments. Is that about what you expected to see? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? Have you tested any of these Winchester 3.5-inch 54 pellet loads of 4-buck? And if so, what kind of results have you seen? Would you hunt with that kind of a shell that gave you that kind of a pattern? And maybe, is there another choke combo that you want to see these shells run through? Let me know all that down below. Either way, that is a very stout load flying down range. And whatever's in front of it, I don't think is going to be enjoying themselves too much when they get hit by it. So definitely a pretty solid performance here today, that's for sure. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All that information will be in the description down below if you're interested in it. But I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.